Good evening and welcome to a joint event this evening between Suffolk Developers and OWASP. I'll pass you over to David Flint, who is the chapter leader of OWASP in a minute, and hopefully I'm assuming some of you are part of that community. So just to fill you in on who Suffolk Developers are, we are a meetup that's been going on for a few years now, but we sit under an umbrella, as does Suffolk's OWASP. I don't know if any of you are aware of that, an umbrella group called the Ipswich and Suffolk Tech Network. And we're a group of about 19 or 20 tech specialists, and our main remit is to look at embedding sector representation in education. So it doesn't really matter to us whether it's secondary school or FE or HE or lifelong learning. But what, I don't know if you guys all find this, but very often we're discovering that education are teaching maybe stuff that once we get these employees, they're not work ready, and we want to be able to just influence that and help as much as we possibly can. And this is all the way through from digital marketing right the way out through to IoT and cybersecurity. So we try and engage with local education establishments, which we're doing quite well. If any of you want more access to that, just let us know. This is all stuff that we do collectively for the community, and you guys are the community. We're not doing it to you, we're trying to do it with you. So I'm going to pass you over to David now before we pass you over to Fiona. So David's just going to explain to anyone who doesn't know what OWASP is.
Thanks, Sam. So OWASP is a global non-profit foundation, and its remit is basically to disseminate free education about cybersecurity, guidance, knowledge, etc. And it's about a global community. So at OWASP Suffolk, what we do is we do free events like this one. We do talks, tech demos, etc., and just trying to disseminate information about IT security and just have fun, basically. I like gamification, and I also like how the skills that you learn in cybersecurity can be transferable, and become second nature. So you use it in everyday use. So what I'll do is I'll post some information about the chapter on the meetup page later. I might do it in a bit. And I'm going to pass you back to Sam, really.
Right, fantastic. I'm also going to drop some stuff in the chat about the ISTN. So we've got more events happening. I think we've got events booked till the end of October. We've got more in the pipeline being added at the moment. You can get yourself added to the mailing list. And the idea is for any community, we've got 2 pub events that we run online and one in person. You're most welcome to attend any of those. So one email should see your social diary and learning experiences for the entire month at any given moment. So I'm going to pass you on to Fiona Bail, who comes from the Eastern Cyber Resilience Centre. So I can't remember how you were introduced to us, Fiona. I think it might have been through, I think it might have been through Chris Cooper at the ENE project or something. There's lots of different stuff going on at the moment. And there is a real drive to pull the community together. And obviously cybersecurity is a huge part of it. Fiona will explain where they've come from. And what we are quite keen to do is make sure that if there's further education, if you don't get enough from this and you want to see this as a series, just let us know. Or if there's other talks that you want to give in relation to this, let us know. So I will pass you on to Fiona. She'll explain who she is. Over to you.
Excellent. So thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully it works. We did test it earlier, but you never know. Can everyone see that? Excellent. As Sam said, I'm Detective Inspector Fiona Bail. I'm formerly still a serving police officer with Cambridgeshire Police, but I've been seconded to the Eastern Cyber Resilience Centre for the next 2 years as their head of cyber and innovation. So I'm going to talk today about what the ECRC is, why the Cyber Resilience Centres have been set up, go through a bit of the current threat picture in the region, as well as some practical tips and awareness really around passwords, phishing, and some of the free tools that we are promoting, and then also how the ECRC can help small to medium enterprises. So what is the ECRC? So we are a Home Office supported project, bringing together policing, industry experts, academia, with the aim of increasing cyber resilience within small and medium businesses in the region. We're a not-for-profit membership organisation led by police officers. So the directors of the company is a Detective Superintendent Paul Lopez, formerly from Essex and Kent, and then the other director is Assistant Chief Constable of Kent, Dan Vasevich. And we're also part of a network of cyber resilience centres across the UK. So the ECRC covers Norfolk, Suffolk, Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Kent and Essex, but all of the centres cover the same services. So if any of your businesses sort of span areas, it might be worth speaking to both centres. So the centres have been set up really because cybercrime is increasing and businesses are the biggest targets. And unfortunately, police can't investigate our way out of the amount of crime that is going on at the moment. Beaming's 5 years in cybersecurity found that 1.5 million organisations fell victim to cybercrime in 2019. So that equates to 25% of all UK businesses, compared to 13% in 2015. And that figure is probably going to have increased over the pandemic because we're all working from home with remote technologies, and we're actually not very good at our security. So a report from the Cabinet Office estimated that the cost of cybercrime to the UK business to be around £21 billion per year. And in the region, Action Fraud report a loss of £233.3 million in fraud and cybercrime between January and July this year alone. So it is a big problem that is unfortunately growing. And although some cyber criminals want to hack into systems just to wreak havoc, for most the main goal is to swindle and make money. And that can be directly through stealing banking credentials or indirectly, such as the use of ransomware to get paid for the return of data or the sale of data, such as logging credentials to other cyber criminals or customer details. And then we've also got state-sponsored hackers who are looking to steal intellectual property. And that was quite evident when the COVID vaccines were being worked on, that actually anybody within those supply chains were actually getting hit quite hard. So most people probably have not actually been subjected to a traditional crime type, such as an assault or burglary, but I'm fairly confident that everybody on the call will probably have had at least one phishing email, text or call in their lifetime. My last one was today, just before the meeting. So it is an ongoing issue. So as well as the instances of cybercrime increasing, the mindset of businesses is actually a concern. There are approximately 600,000 SMEs in the Eastern region, and most of those businesses don't realise that they're a target for cybercrime. However, if you've got an online presence, then you will be a target, as criminals are targeting vulnerabilities. And in the same way that a burglar would prefer an unlocked house without CCTV, cyber criminals are looking for those easiest targets, and those are the ones without fundamental cybersecurity controls in place. So where businesses do realise they're a target, they're actually unsure about where to start or who to trust. And the ECRC is that starting point. So with our free of charge membership, we're hoping to get businesses started on their cyber resilience journey. And the situation has changed. The question being asked from what are you going to do if you do get attacked to what are you going to do when you get attacked. It's unfortunately that almost certain that every business will be subject to an attack of some kind. So in the ECRC, we talk about cyber resilience rather than cyber security. We need to be able to get businesses to recover quickly from any attack. And so the ECRC is different from the local police force in the way that we actually give that guidance and support. And by demonstrating that, I'm going to take you through a very brief history lesson. So crime prevention has been a basic mission for policing since Sir Robert Peel in 1829. And to be honest, not much has changed since those early days. So, sorry, my slides are going funny. So in the 1950s, police started giving basic crime prevention advice, such as advising people to lock their doors and windows. And then in 1965, the Cornish Committee recommended that there was a crime prevention officer for each area. And then by the 1980s, there were embedded crime prevention officers in most forces. And in 2010, crime prevention became specialist with dedicated crime types, and they were relabeled as Protect. But the police have really been there to tell people what to do, not necessarily help them to do it. So as independent people, the police have to remain independent, sorry. So if we went to a business who's had their window smashed, we would be able to say to them, you really should repair your window. But we would never be able to say to them, that glazier down the road's really good, I recommend you go to them. The ECRC is different in this case, where the customers can actually come to us and we can then refer onwards and actually recommend people. And that's very, very different for policing. So our free of charge core membership aims to help help businesses put in place those fundamental cybersecurity controls. So we share information, both current national guidance as well as regional crime trends, so that you could become aware of how criminals are targeting businesses in the East. You receive a weekly little step email so that you consider one aspect of cyber resilience in sort of bite-sized chunks, because being chucked all of the guidance or the recommendations can be a little bit overwhelming for businesses if they're not used to it. And we also help access affordable cyber resilience services through the National Cyber Centre, Security Centre tools, our student services and our trusted partners. So part of the ECRC's aim is to help businesses get to the stage where they're ready for Cyber Essentials. Now, Cyber Essentials is a government-backed scheme, which is an annual review of your cybersecurity to stop you falling victim to common cyber threats. We think of it as an annual MOT for your business's cyber resilience. Our trusted partners are accreditation bodies within the Eastern region, and we can refer you directly to one of them once you're ready to actually get that accreditation. And this is one of the main key differences between policing and the ECRC, that we can actually recommend our trusted partners. So Cyber Essentials looks at 5 control areas, and if you get accredited, it can fully or partially mitigate over 90% of common cyber threats. There's also insurance cover included if you have the accreditation verified, and actually to see how you or business would sort of whether you'd actually meet that criteria. The question set's actually free to download and actually have a look yourself to see whether you actually meet the criteria before spending any money at all. So looking at our current threats. So we draw our information from the NCSC security reports, a national monitoring company, the cyber alarm monthly reports. We have a honeypot run for us by one of our local police forces, and also the action fraud and reports to police from victims of cybercrime and fraud. So unfortunately, stats do mainly rely on companies reporting to the police or action fraud, and we know that companies don't actually do this very regularly. They either don't see it as something that they should be doing, or recognise that actually policing can help them in this area. They also don't know necessarily what they're reporting is both a cybercrime and a fraud. So in order to actually look at the stats for cybercrime, you also have to look at fraud as well to get an accurate picture. So for just cyber, this is over the last 12 months, there have been 375 reports of cybercrime, which we say is cyber dependent. So the Computer Misuse Act offences. That's generated a loss of £376,000. But that again is the loss when it gets reported, not actually the total loss. So it's likely to be vastly underreported. The top categories would be hacking of social media and email, followed by computer virus, malware, spyware, and then hacking server, hacking extortion, and then PBX and dial-through fraud is last. And you can see that the type of business being attacked, the main one is a limited company. And actually the sole trader is quite up there as well, which is why we're actually looking at the micro and small businesses as being one of our key target groups, because they're also the ones that really don't think they're a threat or a bit being attacked, but definitely are. And when you look at the fraud, there have been 3,670 reports of fraud in the last year, of £51 million loss reported. Considering the top type of attack is none of the others, there's a good chance that actually a large proportion of those will be cyber related, and it's just been miscategorized. And then the others, as you can see up there. And again, the biggest businesses being attacked, unsurprisingly, are limited companies. And again, sole trader is quite in that middle section. So industries most at risk for us, education, they're getting hit really hard with ransomware. Health and legal firms, they obviously have a repository of sensitive customer data. So they're finding that they're getting that exfiltrated and then having ransomware as well. There's obviously quite a large risk for them, so they're more likely to pay than a lot of other companies. Technology companies, we're finding a lot of theft type crimes in relation to intellectual property, and then SMEs are a target because of the weak security controls that they have. So we have two different methods of looking at ports that get attacked. our false honeypot, and the cyber alarm, which I'm going to sort of talk about in a little bit. So they're probably the ones that you would expect. The thing that's important to, I think, note is the fact that cyber alarm have over 8,000 different ports being scanned on their vulnerabilities. And really it's about knowing what your system looks like and what is normal for your system to be able to identify whether there's any unusual activity for the ports. So cyber alarm can help do this. So police cyber alarm is a free tool, which kind of works like a CCTV for your network. It's a police-led project to help businesses and organisations understand and monitor suspicious activity. It is free and it is currently available. Once you become a cyber alarm member, you install the virtual server on your system, and that's used to collect and process traffic logs, identifying suspicious activity, which enables you to put mitigation in place to defend yourself. But what use is sort of wider than that attack. An example that we got given was a cyber alarm member is suffering a loss of bandwidth on their internet connection, and a misconfiguration by the service provider was routing traffic from another user onto their internet connection. So police cyber alarm was able to identify the origin of the suspicious traffic, and the member informed the service provider, so they got their full bandwidth back, but also that data breach that was possible was averted. So going on to some practical tips and awareness for you. Some of these I am sure, and I really hope that you already do, but it's always good to refresh. So these are the things that we always recommend to anybody that we speak to. And that is that password compromise is still one of the most common ways that cyber attacks are being enacted. And it's also one of the easiest things to make you and your company more cyber resilient. We do have videos on our YouTube site, which goes into a little bit more detail around these areas if anyone's interested. But I would hope that all of you are following this advice already. And the first one is that you don't use the same password across multiple sites. The risk is that if the details get released in a data breach, then any account where you use the same password can be accessed. And that's really bad if it's obviously your email account. The next one is to make your passwords complex. So NCSC recommends the use of 3 random words. So you think of something that's happened, take those 3 words from that memory and combine them randomly. So I use the tree fell down, smashed the fence, and the dog escaped. So then I pull out escaped, smashed tree, add in some special characters and some capitalizations. I've got a really strong, really unique password that I can remember really easily. But most people have between 60 and 100 passwords now for their online accounts. So I can't remember that many. I would be surprised if many people can remember a unique password that many times. So password managers is the recommendation. So the password manager remembers all your unique passwords and you don't have to. I will come to the questions that are coming through in 1 minute. If I just talk about two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, enable it on your social media accounts and your email accounts. If criminals get into your email, as well as pretending to be you or someone you're talking to, they could potentially reset any password for any of your other accounts, as most people use your email for password reset links. And then social media is obviously important, as this is businesses' shop fronts in the digital world. And if a criminal gains access and locks out, for one thing, it's really difficult to get you back into control. And during that time period, you won't be able to contact potentially your customers, and you'll have no control over what the criminal's posting about, posing as you. So talking about passwords, how often should passwords be changed? Ooh, I like this question. So recommendation is, if it is a strong, secure password, you shouldn't change it unless it's actually been breached. So that obviously causes some issues, and a lot of organisations feel really uncomfortable about putting those in place. The rationale behind it is that if you are forcing password changes every, 6 weeks, a month, the obvious thing to do is have one password and then add a number and change that one number. You're forcing people to have weaker passwords, because if they are following that and one password gets breached, the likelihood is that a criminal can actually then just do that brute force attack by changing that last digit. If you use enterprise password managers, you could probably get around that, because you'd actually be at least enabling them to have complex passwords that are changing. But the actual advice is don't change it unless you need to. I don't know what people's views are about that, but so the other two bits that I really hope all of you have done, and if you haven't done, I would strongly advise you to go and do it either whilst I'm talking or straight afterwards, is to have a look at haveibeenpwned.com. So haveibeenpwned.com is a place where there's a collection of database breaches. Sorry, you simply enter your email address and see if your details have been compromised, and if so, what data has actually been released. So in this example, you can see there are 3 data breaches with usernames, email addresses, passwords, IP addresses, and phone numbers being released. Obviously, knowing what information has been compromised helps you defend yourself against phishing attacks using that information. And you can also click in and see what more details about the breach, because some of them you think, oh, what company is that? And actually it's only until you get into the details you realise where it's come from. Sorry, it's a video, so you have to wait a little bit. You can also enter a password to see if it's been compromised before. So criminals regularly update lists of the most commonly used passwords, so it's worthwhile seeing if your strong password actually is. And you can download a list of compromised passwords from the site. The NCSC recommends that if users are signing up to your site, that you have some way of checking their password isn't already on the list, and having some really strong controls over what their password should be like. One of our customers was a developer, and he realised that some of the contacts within his database were created prior to him enforcing password rules. He ran the list of most used passwords using hashed versions, and a large number were on there, including password as their password. So he had to make sure that all the passwords are reset to ensure that the creation policies are up to date. So it's for developers. If you've got legacy systems, it's really important that you actually go back and check and just make sure that actually all of your systems are conforming, or potentially looking at that. Have I Been Pwned also allows you to search for your own domain, and you can also register. Go back, sorry. You can also register your domain to actually get notified if it does appear in any data breaches as well. So that obviously informs you so that you can change passwords where you need to. Some recent studies showed that on data breaches, cyber criminals get into 50% within the same day. And they only enter once, and that's generally to put forwarding rules onto those accounts so that they can get notified of things like payment invoices to start doing a business email compromise. So I want to move on to, so I'll just look at the chat for a moment. So some sites have stopped using passwords, and so they ask you for an email address and email you a login link. It's popular with energy suppliers and sites like medium.com. That's really good as long as your email is secure. If someone's got your details of your email and is just monitoring your emails, then that's actually a really insecure way of getting into your systems. So two-factor authentication on emails, definitely the one to set up. How does the domain address work and who regulates it? So it's run by Troy, can't think of his surname, but he's a security consultant. It's recommended by the NCSC. The domain control is that you register it, you have to authorize it that it's actually yours, so he does some sort of verification with you, and then whenever a data breach comes up, it gets searched against your domain, and he just sends you an email to say, oh, you've got something that you need to look at. Troy Hunt, well done, thank you. So moving on to phishings. So phishing is by far the most common vector for cyber attacks to start. Now, according to Meta Compliance, 91% of all cyber attacks start with a phishing email, and the attackers are getting more sophisticated all the time and utilising up-to-date current affairs to make their impact known. So certain types of phishing, I would think a lot of you would know most of them. So you have email phishing, obviously phishing sent by an email. What they're doing now is using HTTPS as their links because it looks more trustworthy. Obviously that doesn't actually mean it is. Spearfishing, whereas that targeted email with specific information to an individual. Now, have I been pwned information can really help to identify those because website or emails which have correct details obviously look a lot more believable. Whaling and CEO fraud, so impersonation of a senior team member to another senior team member in order to obtain sensitive data or money. Phishing, so voice phishing or scam calls, and then you've got smishing, which is scam via text message. Angler phishing, so using notifications or direct messaging in a social media application to entice someone to taking action. And then you've got farming, where you have malicious actors hijacking the DNS. And then when the user types in the website address, the DNS obviously redirects to a malicious IP address that might look real. You've got pop-up phishing as well, where malicious actors can place malicious code in the small notification boxes that show up when people go to websites. And the newer version of pop-up phishing uses the web browser's notification features. For example, when a person visits a website, the browser prompts the person with this website wants to show notifications, and when the user clicks it, the pop-up actually allows malicious code to be installed. So this is an example of what I was saying about current affairs. So this was sent to the ECRC's inquiry email address on the 19th of September this year. And if you actually search for Abdulaziz Babarakel shows up as the CEO of Bank Email Afghanistan with an active LinkedIn presence as well. So the main thing around phishing emails is if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. And this was reported to the NCSC Suspicious Email Reporting Service, because they actually look at the email domains and see if there's any way of taking them down. It's unlikely they'd be able to do much with this one, unfortunately. So this one is an example of, again, another phishing one. It appears to be on face value to have been sent by the official UK government using gov.uk and invites the recipient to claim for the 5th self-employed income support scheme. So as with most phishing emails, the first indication of it being criminal is the from address. In this case, got gov.uk, but then it goes on to state it was sent by contact@gobotify.com, and that's not what you'd expect with gov.uk sender. Also, the to line is a little bit dodgy with recipients, and they also spell deliberately incorrectly within the email, which is another sign that it might not be all okay. But if you're in a rush or if you really need the money, you might just not see these issues. So this is a real example of an email phishing which almost worked in our region. So it gets sent, James, I hope this finds you well. Can I ask for a quick favour, David? Good morning, and I've replaced the actual name with the CEO, but of course, please let me know how I can assist you. James, I wanted to get something from you yesterday, but it's been sorted out. Still need your help. I'm in a conference meeting right now as I'd be working till late midnight, but I need you to get me some gift cards. Could you pick up a few Amazon gift cards for me? I tried purchasing online, but no luck. When I'm done with the meeting, I'll reimburse you. Yeah, of course. How many do you need and what to value? Total amount needed is £800. That's 8 cards at £100 each. I need you to scratch the back of the card to reveal the pin, then take a snapshot of the back showing the pin and have them attached to me. How soon can you get the cards? And that response was what actually tipped off the person that it was a phishing email. So James reported it as a phishing attempt. He was initially fooled because the display name was actually the same as the person purporting to be contacted him, but the email address was wrong and it was completely out of character as well. On this one, it is, I think, quite a good example of a spearfishing campaign. So cyber criminals targeted Donna from marketing. Now, Donna doesn't report to Nick, the CFO, so the scammers assumed that she didn't have Nick's phone number in her contact list, which is correct. And also they sent the text message over the weekend to make it feel more urgent, and probably Donna wouldn't want to talk over the phone on a weekend. So it's, hey, what's up? Sorry to bother you. It's okay. And to make it more urgent, they've said they've crafted a fake complaint letter from a key customer, and they made it seem like Donna had done something wrong and that she needed to fix it. So the scammers personalised the link that they sent here to make it again feel more secure. It feels like a secure drive, and the hopes that Donna thinks it's legitimate. And then they tell Donna that they'll talk about it further on Monday, again building that trust relationship that actually it's all okay. So Donna logs into a fake Google site with her real credentials. she does get a fake letter. So the fake letter then, again, for Donna, thinks that it's a real thing, and the actual hack of her account doesn't go reported until she gets back into work on Monday. So these are some examples of smishing. So this is where people are contacting you via text on your phone. The parcel update one is a really current scam at the moment across the country, but we've seen quite a lot in the East. The link takes you to a payment page where you get charged a small fee, normally a couple of pounds, which you wouldn't really worry about. But then you get a phone call from the criminals saying, oh, it's the bank, we've noticed you've paid this money, we believe it's a scam. They do their social engineering trick, get you to give them all your bank details, and unfortunately they wipe you out. And people have lost thousands of pounds because of that scam. This is another example where you get sent a fake text message from Google. So rogue sign in, and they say that they're going to have a verification code sent to you to make sure that you're a real one. But the attacker then actually goes and tries to log into that account. They get the recovery code sent to the victim, and then the victim sends the recovery code to the attacker, who then logs in and gains access to the account. So these examples really are just to show you how the variation, I guess, that your employees might be coming up against, and actually how building awareness about these different scams is an ongoing issue and needs to be sort of factored in, I suppose, into everyday life. This is just a really, I thought it was quite a clever way of phishing coming about. Hope you agree.
Thank you for taking my call. Before we continue, could you say the first and third digits of your security pin? Oh, I didn't catch that. Sorry. That's the second and fourth, please. Okay, lovely. I've gone through. Did you see what I did there?
It's a scam. Never reveal your full security pin, even if you think it's your bank calling. Learn how to protect yourself from fraud.
So again, really simple, and a lot of people will fall for that because they're in that conversation, they forget what people have already spoken about. So some of the ways that you can spot a phish is basically designed to get you to do something. So it will have a level of urgency. It'll have a bit of authority, so either from a senior member of staff or from someone that is supposed to have that you will do this now. So there'll be a bit of mimicry, so impersonation of an individual or organisation, and a bit of curiosity as well can be thrown in to get you to click that link. But some of the old ways of identifying phish aren't reliable anymore. So users really have to be aware that it is an ongoing thing. So grammar and spelling are definitely getting better with more sophisticated ones. With phones, you can't always see the full URL, so it's very easy for those to be tricked. So the advice is always to, if you do get some sort of scam saying your account's broken for whatever reason, is to go via your own way of getting to that legitimate site rather than clicking on any link. And always confirm any change of banking information with the person using a different communication method than you got the verification at the first bit. So hands up, who can spot a phishing URL? I've made it quite hard, but it is the top one. And it won't be obvious at first glance, but it's just to demonstrate that your employees, you think, oh, they've clicked on a phishing link, actually could be really a really very, very good one. And they're using a different alphabet to our Latin alphabet. So most browsers are on the lookout for what they call homophone attacks and will display the underlying domain. But if you've already clicked on it, it might be too late to actually look then at that URL. So it's just one to be aware of. So other ways that you can sort of prevent the phishing actually going any further would be that you don't let users install unauthorized programs. So make sure you're not using admin accounts for everybody, that they are actually user accounts. Don't allow programs to auto run. Make sure two-factor authentication is switched on for all of your staff. That does prevent a lot of the phishing type attacks where credentials might be stolen. They really struggle to get the 2FA, especially if you use an authentication app or a physical token. There is an Office add-in for suspicious activity report, for suspicious email reporting service to NCSC. You can download it for Office 365. And that, I think, is a really good way of actually nudging people to actually have it always in their mind. Is this email supposed to be reported? Just pulls up on your toolbar, and it's well worth doing it. Make sure you've got staff awareness training sorted for everybody who's involved, and also make sure that your staff know what information is available. So both for businesses, but also for personal staff members, especially for senior staff. So going on from that a little bit is that there is a vast amount of information that we put out about ourselves online, especially for companies. We like talking about what we're doing, who we're talking with, where we're going. But obviously that information is very easily available and can be used to craft bespoke phishing emails. And there have been instances where the information being online is enough to craft fake ID badges and keycards. And there's also a consideration about whether the information that you're sharing is enough to actually reset some security questions. So obviously using IP addresses, usernames and passwords which are genuine makes the emails look more believable. There was last year to a couple of years ago, a whole load of emails being sent around saying that you've been found on porn sites, you better pay me some money, otherwise I'm going to send it to the police because it's child porn. But actually what the person had done was got a data breach, got all the IP addresses and done mass emails to everyone with the IP address and sometimes the password. But people panic and they do it. They might think that there's something wrong with their system, even if they haven't been visiting naughty sites. So too much sharing. So how many people have answered this type of question on social media? What's your favourite type of food? But have you also had it as an online security question? So some of the quizzes on social media sites are designed to actually get those security information questions. The sort of image next to it about the 25 random things, people posting this type of information makes it very easy for crafted phishing emails to be put through. It's just awareness of what is being posted. So the NCSC has some ways of securing your email systems, and for two real reasons. One, to make it difficult for fake emails to be sent from your organisation's domain. So they recommend using a send policy framework, domain keys identification, mail, as well as domain-based message authentication, reporting and confirmation. And they also advise protecting your email in transit with TLS. So obviously the benefits are to help protect individuals and businesses that you do business with, to make it harder for cyber criminals to spoof your email address. It also helps protect your brand and reputation and reduce the costs of service downtime spent on email fraud. So if you want more information about how to set any of those up, the NCSC link is there. I can share the slides at the end of it if you want. So Solarwind has showed how sophisticated some of the cyber attacks are becoming. And in this case, a lot of the conventional security advice can't counter the attack. So these are the things that we would all used to say: only install signed versions. Didn't help because this software was signed. Update your software to the latest version. It didn't help because the updated software was the subverted one. It's probably the only time that you are more cyber secure by not doing an update. But anyway, monitor software behavior. This did eventually detect the problem, but the attack was quite stealthy and was only detected after loads of tremendous damage was done. And the review source code wasn't a certain defense either. And it's not certain that the source code changes were visible to developers. They were really carefully written to look like expected code, so developers might not have noticed even if they were visible. However, the attackers had control of the build environment, so they could have inserted the attack without it being visible at all. So in terms of that, what could help? was potentially to harden the build environment against the attackers. Solarwind followed some really poor practices, such as using insecure FPT and also publicly revealing passwords. And then there's an argument that companies should be moving to verified reproducible builds and actually getting independent companies to build the same source code and verify that the build results are the same as claimed. But that is, I think, a way down the track, but it might be interesting for people to start thinking about now in development terms. Typo squatting in open source repositories. It's a growing attack vector. In April 2020, more than 700 malicious typo squatting libraries were found in the Ruby Gems repository alone. So this is where they basically just change a word or change the order of words. So moving dash images instead of moving underscore images. So the guidance would be to double check names carefully, review the date added and the download numbers, make sure they're actually what you'd expect, and consider using a private repository. The NCSC has some really good guidance around actually protecting your code repositories, and I would look at whether they that would be useful for you guys to look through. Ransomware, I am assuming that everybody knows what ransomware is, but it is where some malware gets onto your system and encrypts all your files, and then you have to pay to get it back. So research has shown that victims still pay for ransomware even when they have backups. And I want to sort of draw this to your attention because of the reasons why. So the first one is that nobody has actually tested in advance how long that data restoration period takes. So some companies have discovered they've got a few petabytes of backup that they need to actually download, which is going to take 3 months. So what options do they actually have at that point? And then the second one is that their digital key required to decrypt their backup is on the server that got done by ransomware. So it is about testing your recovery and making sure that everybody knows how that will work. And then paying the ransom is no guarantee that you'll actually get the data back either. So the malware hunter team found the PISA ransomware actually what they were looking for in terms of their scripts. So unsurprisingly, the script seeked out files relating to the company's financial personal information, such as audit, banking information, login credentials, tax forms, blah, blah. But it also looked for keywords that could be particularly harmful for companies, such as crime, investigation, fraud, bureau, federal, hidden, secret, illegal, and terror. So just a consideration would be maybe look at your naming conventions and see whether there are different ways that you can actually store your data. Yes, if a criminal has access to your system, they will be able to manually review your files and potentially find them, but it will take longer. And it's that length of time that they're in your network, you have more chance of actually catching them before they can upload all of your sensitive files. As I was saying, paying isn't always the solution.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If a company suffers from ransomware, what is the actual advice that is given to them by the police in terms of payment? Is it to pay or not to pay?
Our advice would be not to pay. However,
Okay.
It is a business decision. And we accept that there are reasons why you would pay, but our advice is always not to. If you compare it to kidnapping in actual physical kidnapping, especially in South American countries, those countries who have a high prevalence of kidnaps is because it has become so widespread that actually no one enforces it. And because they're not enforcing it and people are paying, it's actually a lucrative business for them and it will keep growing. And ransomware will be exactly the same until people,
I agree with you.
Lucrative.
I'm surprised the advice isn't that it's illegal to pay.
No, it's not illegal.
It should be.
There are arguments.
I'll tell you, no, it just should be. It just should be.
I personally probably would agree with you. But
for a very simple reason, I think it is that if you actually look at the attacks, they predominantly come from a limited number of places. Yeah. And if you look at the anti-terrorism legislation, I think there is a significant percentage chance that you'd be paying an organisation that would be illegal underneath that legislation. I mean, I can't say who he is actually, but I know a big company, which monitors all of that for its accounts.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a FANG company, and there is the concentration of attacks from such a limit. You know, the 10.
Yeah.
You know, a significant percentage of attacks is from just like a very limited number of places.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's we can only go what the government tell us, and at the moment it's not illegal, but the advice is not to pay.
But if that person said, I've been hacked by a terrorist organization, that would be illegal. Therefore, if you can say, well, there's a 30% chance that you have been attacked by,
however, for court of law, it has to be beyond all reasonable proof. So it gets into that murky area of, is it someone using the name almost? Is it someone just in the locality? Actually proving that it is definitely going to terrorism is a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean, it's very likely to be someone who's sponsored or indirectly by the Chinese government, or
a few governments,
a few others. So I just think it's, yeah,
it is definitely an interesting debate to have. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's another thing which I guess at the end, I don't know how much time there's going to be at the end, but I work in payments, and there's a lot of security around this in payments, and I don't know why those solutions are not applied generally to all cybersecurity.
I think it is that businesses have, or for the audience that we have, nothing is mandated for one thing. So yes, for some of the payment things, they have to have PCI, or
well, it'd be an interesting conversation at the end, maybe, because there are things that are generally good against this whole phishing and all of that type of stuff applied in payments. Yeah, there are some mega networks that one could take advantage of, and I don't know, and they are set up so as to support non-financial transactions, but people don't seem to use them for non-financial stuff, and I don't know why.
Dom, let me interrupt you quickly, because I think all of us struggle with the lack of regulation in all of our sectors of digital, and the government's trying to catch up. So the fact that the police have spun this out feels like this is the beginning of the conversation, Dom. So all the points that you make are the type of things that we're going to continue to talk to Fiona about, and we want that input fed back. So when we get to the end of this talk as well, we'll get some others set up as well. You've obviously got access to OWASP, but guys, do consider this an ongoing dialogue. Cybersecurity is here to stay. This is day one of lots and lots of talks and lots of conversations about regulation. All of that seems useful, Dom, and we'd love to, come and get involved, would be my advice.
Brilliant.
Back to you, Fiona.
Thank you. So going on from that, about the other reasons that you might not want to pay, is the Suffolk State of Ransom 2021 report said that although the number of people who actually were deciding to pay has increased to 32% in 2021, only 8% of them got the full data back. So nearly a third couldn't recover more than half of it. So that is quite a high proportion that you're going to have some data loss. And then 80% of businesses that chose to pay and got access then had a subsequent ransomware attack, again from the same people. So again, not a very good reason to pay, because you're going to get hit again. And there's no guarantee that the data that they've already taken is actually going to stay private. It's almost certain that they will release it at some point, or will get it released, sell it to someone. So in that vein of actually what happens if or when you get a ransomware attack, is business continuity. So when the business is attacked, what are you going to do? So this is the guidance from the NCSC about preparing for instance. So identifying critical systems and assets. So identify what electronic information is essential to keep your organisation running, such as contact details, emails, calendars, essential documents. Find out where your information is stored. Is it on a single machine in your office? Is it on a remote server? Is it stored in the cloud by a third party? If your VoIP system is affected, can you actually reach the required people that you need to? Next one's prioritise the risk and manage it. So consider what had happened if you no longer had access to critical systems or assets that you've identified. So by understanding what's important to your business, why it's important and what you're doing to protect them, you can then hopefully prioritise where you need it the most. And that might be useful for board conversations. Going on to that, putting risk on the agenda. So actually have those discussions about organisational risk. What is the value for the company? What are you doing to protect it? It should be part of that normal business. And make an incident plan. Making sure you keep the important information you've identified in a safe place so that you can use it if your equipment's stolen or damaged. Ensure you know how to recover a backup in the event of a data loss, such as ransomware, and train relevant people in your organisation so that they can do the same. So if you disappear on holiday, you don't get that call 2 o'clock in the morning saying everything's gone a bit up the river. And assign roles to members of staff and document who owns each responsibility in the event of the incident and how they can be contacted, and make sure the contact is going to be an offline contact, so potentially personal mobile phones. There was a case of a big business who got ransomware, and they resorted to putting billboards outside their building saying, don't turn on your laptop and call this number. That only works if people are coming into the office. When people are at home, how do you get a hold of them then? So this is a short video, it just explains exercise in the box from the NCSC.
Welcome to Exercise in a Box, an easy to use and free product created by the National Cybersecurity Centre for small and medium-sized organisations, local government and industry users. Exercise in a Box is an online service that helps you find out how resilient your organisation is to a cyber attack, and which evaluates your readiness to respond to critical cyber incidents, all in a safe environment. It's designed to complement your business practices and can direct you to other possible National Cybersecurity Centre sources of help, including Cyber Essentials and the Small Business Guide. Exercise in a Box has been designed to enable any organisation to facilitate their own cyber exercises. It provides all the knowledge required for setup, logistics, planning, delivery and post-exercise activity, all easily accessible in one place. It's made up of exercises of both a discussion and technical nature, suitable for organisations like yours. By using Exercise in a Box, you'll get a straightforward insight into how well your organisation is protected against cyber attacks and where opportunities for improvements may lie. Taking a small group of your key staff through a series of structured exercise scenarios and questions relating to a specific area of cybersecurity, you will understand.
Sorry, I keep on clicking away from it.
Some of the risks your organisation is currently exposed to and what you can do about it. Access to Exercise in a Box and all related materials is completely free. The only cost you'll incur is the time taken to prepare for and complete the exercises, and the commitment from your key staff to participate. You can choose to do as few or as many exercises as you like. We've designed the exercises for small and medium-sized organisations, but it is open for anyone to use. Give it a go and let us know how you get on and how we can improve it.
So that's just a short video which says about one of the free tools that we promote to businesses. And it is a really good conversation starter for companies to think about what happens when we get attacked. So some of the other free tools that we actively promote, there's a cyber action plan. So that is for small businesses and it basically goes through the 5 control areas, making sure that their password policies, backups, malware, user control and secure configuration is all relatively at least adequate, I suppose is the word. It's a good starting point for businesses to actually see. It also does it for individuals as well. There's exercise in a box, which I just spoke about. There's a board toolkit, so a series of questions that boards can actually answer and have that discussion about, and just raise the priority potentially of cyber security within a business. There's also free cyber security training for staff, which is just a half-hour online presentation. And then there's also some active cyber defences. So there's early warning, which helps organisations investigate cyber attacks on the network by notifying them of malicious activity that's been detected in information feeds. And there's also logging made easy, which helps organisations install a basic logging capability on the IT estate for routine end-to-end monitoring of Windows systems. So there are loads of free tools out there, but part of the problem that businesses have is that they don't actually know where to look to get those. So one of the job of the ECRC is to actually help them identify what would be useful for them. And then moving on to actually the services that the ECRC can provide. So we have 8 cyber resilience services, which have been especially designed for smaller businesses, including the self-employed and the third sector. We deliver that through an innovative UK talent pipeline programme, where the UK leading universities in cyber skills partner with policing and the private sector to provide commercial training and oversight for students to deliver this work. Which means that whilst companies benefit from affordable priority cyber resilience services tailored to suit smaller organisations, we can prepare and speed up the UK's talent with high quality work experience. And this will have them ready to ensure law enforcement, defence and critical national infrastructure can help fulfil their skills gap to protect us all at home and work. And it's all under the expert guidance of some of the best in the field of cyber resilience, our senior ethical hackers. So just talking a little bit about that. Oh, sorry about the colours on those slides. So we provide 3 types of vulnerability assessment, internal, remote and a web app. So these assessments are designed to inform organisations about weaknesses present and give direction on how to reduce those risks that the weaknesses cause. So for businesses wanting to reduce their security risk, a vulnerability assessment might be a good place to start. If you're working on a web app, it might be worth considering regular web app assessments during the build to ensure that your product is secured by design from the outset. The end report is in a plain language interpretation of the results and how any vulnerabilities might be used by an attacker, as well as simple instructions on how any vulnerabilities might be fixed. I'll stress these are not pen tests, they are vulnerability assessments. So we do not go into a system and try and see how far we can get. It is just a vulnerability assessment. We do provide 2 different internet investigations, one for individuals and one for businesses as a whole. As we kind of discussed with the phishing attacks, by understanding what the world knows about a CEO or a company, it can inform businesses about potential targets in relation to phishing. So if you've just published details about a deal with a new supplier who isn't cyber secure, could they become a target in the future to get to you? Does the CEO's upcoming visit to an offshore conference give the perfect start to a transfer this money now style phishing email? We also offer a security policy review to ensure that businesses have policies that are current for the threats that the business face, as well as business continuity planning, a bit like exercise in the box, but someone will actually guide businesses through that whole exercise to actually test the planning and see if businesses are prepared for the when. And then we also can deliver security awareness training. So phishing is still the greatest cyber threat, and staff need to be aware of the risks of cybercrime so that they can protect themselves, but also protect business. And it needs to be an ongoing rather than a once they join and only when they join the organisation. So after student services, so we highlight the security issue in terms of vulnerability assessments, but we can't fix them. So the customer gets a detailed report about how the issues are found and how they should be fixed. But ultimately, the customer then has to work with either their ICT provider, or if they haven't already got one, potentially one of our trusted partners. So if they've already got an IT company, we would work with that IT company to make sure that actually it was a really clear dialogue about what was the problem and solutions. So in summary, the CRC is a new way of working for police. We've handed over some of our crime prevention responsibilities to a police-led, not-for-profit business. Cybercrime is a growing problem. And unfortunately, if you're online, you are a target for cyber criminals. If businesses do realise they're a target, they're normally a little bit unsure about where to start or who to trust. But we're hoping that the ECRC is their starting point. Our free of charge membership hopefully gets that business started on their cyber resilience journey. Ultimately, we are here to help. So we are very happy to share and talk as much as possible just to get more businesses cyber resilient. So our website has lots of resources. It also has a bit of fun quizzes as well as cyber resilient bingo. And yeah, please join our membership and keep updated about what's happening. Thank you for listening. And any questions?
Yeah. Thank you, Fiona. One early question was, will these slides be made available to everybody?
Yeah, no problem at all.
If you email them to me, what I will do, guys, is I will send them out to you via email, and then I will share, because we'll record this, so I'll get this onto the website tomorrow and we'll send you the recording as well, so that's great. There are quite a few questions in here. David, I don't know how you guys normally deal with questions afterwards. Do you want to just unmute? There you go. Nick, you're on. You've stuck your thumb up at us. That was a good shout. What's the question?
If I can unmute, I was just saying thanks for sharing the slides, that's all.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Thank you. I thought you were going to say, would you like to see my dog? Which would have made me happy, but that didn't happen.
Well, he's just been taken out for a walk, so I would have, but I couldn't. So
if I send the slide decks, I need pictures of that dog. So no, that's fantastic. Anyone else got any questions? There were some other people here from OWASP. I don't know if you guys have got any questions for Fiona and for Paul as well. Paul Lopez, he's here as well from the ECRC. Paul, I don't know if you want to say hello and introduce yourself. Put you on the spot.
Hi Sam, yeah, thank you for that. Thank you, Fiona. Another great presentation. Yeah, I mean, what I really add to what Fiona said is that sorry, I can't hear. Has someone got feedback?
Yeah, no, it's gone. It's done. It's done. Sorry.
Is that, you know, we've been set up by the government. So this is a government Home Office initiative, as I think has been explained, and it's the government's desire, and you know they want businesses, and not just SMEs. You know, we're also working with schools, and we'll probably work with health and other public sector organisations as well. But the best way to ensure that businesses are cyber resilient, as far as we're concerned, is that they join the centre as free members. It doesn't cost anything to join as a free core member. Some of the services that we've spoken about do have costs and tails to them if they're required. But the thing about the cyber threat is that it's ever changing. You know, so the threat today is not the threat tomorrow. So doing, and I think this is possibly, you know, what's happened in the past is that we've, you know, organisations have spoken to businesses and given them some updates and some advice, and they've taken away, and they might have done some stuff. That's great, and then it's just been left. I think, you know, for us, if you join the centre, you join for the long term. So it's about, it's, you know, we want to help businesses today, tomorrow, and the next day. You know, that's what we're all about, really. And you know, education is part of it, but actually changing behaviour is the most important thing. And businesses really need to, you know, the same as us. You know, we're going to go through the Cyber Essentials program ourselves. We know we need to do that for ourselves. Clearly, you need to practice what you preach. It wouldn't look too good if we got hacked and ransomware ourselves, would it now? So yeah, that's the thing, really. I mean, it's a fascinating subject, but it's something that we need to see behavioural change. And the government, I think, before they start mandating stuff, which I think will happen, I think you'll start getting sectors within business already with the Law Society. I'm not sure. I missed the first 15 minutes because my internet went down. Apologies. We've been working with a really significant ransomware incident in the region with a law firm, and there's the cost. There's the ransomware cost. Obviously, there's the loss of business for the 2 or 3 weeks it took for the law firm to get back and running again. There was every possibility that they may never get up and running, and the business could have gone down, you know, altogether, because people within their supply chain didn't want to have anything to do with them electronically, because they're concerned about the malware that has infected their systems can be passed on, the threat can be passed on to them. Because of that particular incident and a number of others affecting law firms, the Law Society are seriously considering mandating Cyber Essentials or something similar, one of the ISO accreditations for law firms nationally. And I think we'll start to see that, because I think there's, we talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people sort of nod their heads and say, yeah, we need to do something, and nothing actually happens. And the situation is becoming, untenable, I think, in the here and now. And I think we want to get ahead of that. We don't want the government to, or firms to say you've got to have it. We'd like people to voluntarily do it without being told they have to have it first. So
this is something that this group was sort of set up for, Paul. David Flint, who is the head of the chapter, has just commented that his interaction with SMEs is that they find it hard to buy into cybersecurity. They perform a quick cost/risk analysis and decide it's not worth it anyway. Sure. Small fish in a big pond, etc. However, one of the things for me, I work in digital as opposed to technology, but it's cross-sector, and there's no, if you think about building regulations in the context of building buildings, there's no equivalent in terms of building code bases. Plus, with a brick, it doesn't really matter what shape or size a brick is, you're still going to elevate it upwards and stick it together with other bricks to build it. Sure. All back-end, front-end development, they're all unique snowflakes. And so even legislating rules is really difficult. So that's one of the things we want to make available is ourselves. So guys, I think this is a sort of two-way war cry, which is this is an ongoing problem and there is no infrastructure, but there are stuff that there is benefit to you all. You guys are the clever guys sometimes who build this stuff, like what opportunities are open to you guys, Dom, you're mentioning, thoughts around legislation. Literally speak up. Like, they do not have enough people with technical knowledge and experience who are pushing this stuff towards the legislators. So they're trying their best. And I think that's what David's the same. I think people who buy this stuff are just a bit shocked and they don't know what the words mean. Legislators are trying to work out how to legislate and they need us to help them. So I think, Paul and Fiona, that's the message. Like, bring these messages back to us as often.
I think the legislation's already out there. It's just a matter of tweaking it. So GDPR, for example, an organization can be fined 4% of its turnover or 20 million, whichever is the higher. Now, at the moment, they don't enforce it. And when they do enforce it, it's some sort of nominal amount. But I mean, but there are rules out there. So people have a duty of care towards GDPR data. And if you're in an area where that personal data can damage someone, then, and by the way, the UK is good. The UK has handed out far more in terms of fines than the whole of the rest of Europe put together. So the payment legislation of the enforcement of stuff underneath PSD2 was enforced by the UK a year early. I have been working on rolling out cards across Europe recently, and I can tell you that it hasn't been enforced in the rest of Europe. It's enforced to some degree, but not fully, and that's several years after it was supposed to go live. So, so that's me just waffling. The really concrete thing is there's a standard called 3DS 2.0. And it's used in payments. What it is when you log on to a device, whether it be your laptop, whether it be a browser on your laptop or a mobile phone, information is taken off your device and it is sent to a third party. I'm slightly simplifying it, in real time. And that third party, there are several big ones, but the one's called RSA. And they literally have hundreds of thousands of organizations around the world registered with them. So that device information is sent to RSA. And in real time, an AI, which stores all of that information over a 3-month period, checks whether or not that thinks that there's anything suspicious. And then what that does is, let's say somebody has been defrauded from a particular IP address, or someone set up a farm, and a robo farm, and they've used virtualized machines with virtualized IP addresses, it will spot that. And so because someone has been defrauded from that IP address in Japan, I am saved in the UK. It literally has hundreds of thousands of organizations, and within the UK, all of the banks use one of two providers, and most of them use both of them. Yeah. And therefore, now that's for financial transactions, but they have a service which is called non-financial transactions, which you can integrate with, which provides exactly the same service, but nobody seems to use, but it's the same service. I mean, nobody uses it, I've used it, but I mean, people don't, it's not generally used, and yet everybody uses 3DS.
But is part of that is actually that the banking system has all set that up. Rather than individuals.
It's an ecosystem. It's an ecosystem, but it's actually in front of the banking system. So
whose responsibility to actually use 3DS? Is it down to the individual to say that they're using it, or does the bank force you to use it?
No, so there is no responsibility to use 3DS, but there's certain regulatory responsibilities to be GDPR and PSD, Payment Service Directive, and it's the only solution in town. So that's why everyone uses it.
I think that's part of the problem, though, is that you've got individuals who you're trying to change behaviours with, and regulation doesn't work with individuals changing behaviour, unfortunately.
No, the regulation was for the banks. No, and they did it for years and years and left it to the last minute. So I think the developers love it. Paul, Dom, will you come and give that talk for us? Because it feels like something that Suffolk Developers.
PSD, GDPR is a really important part of it. And GDPR does affect everybody.
I spoke to data protection. There's a DPO, the Data Protection Centre. So they basically run a kind of in-house DPO centre. They run that legislation. So I went straight to them. I was like, right, you guys seem like a natural fit to talk about cybersecurity. I'm going to go back and reposition it because there's two things. There's cybersecurity and cyber protection, and they are different. And so I think there's another side of this where we need more collaboration. So
I don't think it's education. This is the thing, right, which is that the risk of fraud is so high on payments, right, that the responsibility has been taken away from the end user.
Yeah.
Right. And people don't realize just how much protection there is in there. And it doesn't mean you can't get defrauded, but it does mean that that the chances of somebody being actioned against and it is much higher. And therefore it's quite a risky thing, because if you do certain types of fraud and you get blocked by RSA, it affects you globally. So it's like if you're doing, ransomware is a lot more attractive because there is no blacklist. There is no global blacklist. There is effectively a global blacklist for payment fraud.
John, I report a lot of broken email addresses, services to ISPs and companies when I get a phishing scam but never get a response. How can we help the consumers when ISPs don't do anything to help? So it sounds as if there's a lot of narrative of sort of people talking into a void a little bit, but I think we'll get there. And you guys doing this work feels like opening that door. You guys presumably listen to what we're saying and take it back to someone. So
the NCSC have a direct reporting now for emails, so you can report either through the add-in through Outlook, which I spoke about, but you can also forward it to them. They are actively looking at domains that they can take down. They do the same with text messages that get sent through to them. And there's one other one that they deal with as well. I can't remember which one it is because it's not gone, but they're definitely seeking to take down as many as they can in any way that they can. So telephone numbers, emails, whatever they can get out, email addresses. Yeah, websites. That's the one.
Any other questions, guys?
Just one other thing, which is that the law has changed in the UK regarding cybersecurity. So the government is now in a position where it can attack. Used to be illegal to attack, and now this gets into the. I got to be slightly careful what I say, but again, within payments, there is legislation that is not broadcast that allows a very proactive approach towards organisations that are breaching that. And if that was applied more generally and underneath the changes, I think it may be, then maybe things will improve. But the thing is that those standards, the 3DS is not enforced. It's not a standard. It's not enforced. It's a de facto standard that solves a problem that companies have ended up using because of legislation. So it's quite. There is no law saying you have to use 3DS, but there's almost no way to be compliant with GDPR without using it. And with certain aspects of GDPR, and there's no way to really implement PSD2 without using 3DS 2.0. I mean, that's essentially the difference with 2.0.
Don, will you sign up for a talk? If I send you a link, will you please sign up for a talk and come and talk to us about that? Because I know when we built a booking system and two-factor, that was all we talked about.
I'm happy to talk about 3DS 2.0.
Cool.
I'll probably have to get permission to.
That's fine. Again, it's more thought-provoking than anything else. Right, guys, I am going to run through the next events that we've got. So on October the 5th, we've got turbocharging the performance of your lamp stack from Adam Cable, who is an incredible local developer. He sits under Innovation Martlesham, and as I say all the time, he's the guy who worked for Martin Lewis. So the reason you have cheaper streaming music and cheaper nappies, weirdly, he is the guy who created a lot of the scripts in the background that ran. We've then got Luke Morris is coming to talk about raising startup capital. So I know that's relevant to more entrepreneurs in the room. We've then got a talk that's gone a bit viral. So we've got Paul Graham from Matrix coming to talk about the introduction to 5G in the cloud. We've got about 800 signups for that. So it's all kicked off because we've only got 100 seats. So we've had to take some action around that. And it is that he works for Matrix, and they are very keen to make the Matrix series and have many more talks from a telco perspective. There's a chat. If you see the event on the ISTN group as an event, there is a chat within it that you can join. So this is people talking about 5G in the cloud. Then we've got on the October the 18th, we've got Sync asking for help, things I wish I knew. This was a postponed talk given by Chris Philippe Rares, who runs Game Anglia and does lots of different projects in and around the area. So you can literally ask him anything. Within all of that, we've then got alternative weeks. We've got 2 pub events. So this week, I think, correct, David, nod or a thumb up or thumb down, we've got the Ipswich Drink About, which again at the moment I think is an in real life event at the Thomas Wolsey, correct me if I'm wrong. The week after that we've again got the Thirsty Robot, where David is the landlord. Again, I'll make sure that gets onto the website tomorrow and you can come and join us in a virtual pub. Dom, I think you've been to that as well and hopefully had a warm reception. I think you have to bring your own drinks, that's the only downside of it. And that's it. So guys, I've dropped the link in there in terms of all of the different events. You are most welcome to all of them. With Sims, I think Sims is the kind of consumer end with the small business owners learning about digital marketing, up to the more technical end, which is you guys. So there's a broad spectrum there of things. So if there isn't anything for you and there's stuff for other people, do let them know. But other than that, I'd just like to extend a thank you to Fiona and Paul. David, can I ask you to sign off finally on behalf of the OWASP community?
Sure. I'd just like to say that myself, Martin and Wojciech are working on the next talks from OWASP Suffolk, and more information on that will be coming out soon. And that's it from us.
There you go. You can sign up. There will be more and more details on the istn.org website, but most of the groups are featured on Meetup as Meetup. So if you look for our area, you should find all of them. Thank you all for attending, and we will see you at a future event. Dom's future event, let's be specific. All right, we'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.